Today is Tuesday, April 12th, 2016, and we are interviewing Bernice Robertson at Dominican Oaks Retirement Community in Santa Cruz, California. My name is Jeannie Zarnicki, David Addison is recording, and Julie Richardson will be indexing the finished video. We all work for the Santa Cruz Public Library System. This interview is being conducted for the Veterans History Project at the Library of Congress. So, Bernice, when and where were you born?
I was born in Jersey City, New Jersey, right across from the big city, and on April the 19th, 1927.
Okay, and what was your branch of service in the war you served in?
I was in the United States Navy Nurse Corps.
Okay, and that was during the Korean conflict?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and what was your highest rank?
Lieutenant junior grade.
And let's start off by having you tell us a little bit about your family background and what you were doing before you joined the military.
Well, I think I always wanted to be a nurse. I can remember playing with my dolls and putting bandages on them, even breaking one doll's arm so I could bind it up as a broken arm. And then at the age of 17, just graduating from high school, I went into nurses training at Philadelphia General Hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. At that time, the government was seeking nurses, and they had the Cadet Nurse Corps program, which I entered into. The government then supplied my funding for the school, for my books, for my uniforms, and the last 6 months we would be obligated to go serve as the government desired our need. Fortunately or unfortunately, in our school, there was no movement, so I remained the 3 years at the nursing school.
Okay. And so you were commissioned, and tell us about the training.
Well, what happened, I figured since the government was so kind to me that I would be good to it, and decided I was going to join the service. Now, I had a choice, Army or Navy, and I thought, I don't really think I want to do much camping as the Army did, so I looked into the Navy, and decided I would join the Navy, and got the information, went through the interviews, and put my hand up and swore, and I became a ensign in the U.S. Navy Nurse Corps. I have to tell you something that was funny at that time. I had a brother-in-law who was a chief petty officer, and when I told him I was joining the service, he said to me, Army or Reserve? I said, what's the difference? He said, 20 years Reserve, Army, 20 years regular, and 6 years Reserve. I said, I'm in for 20. So I went directly from, well, I wasn't quite 21. I graduated in September, and I wasn't going to be 21 until April. So during that period of time, I was working in a local hospital in the operating room, which was my area of most interest and specialty.
Can you tell us about some of the duties that you performed there?
In the Navy?
Or in the hospital, the training?
Well, as I finished in nurses training, we had it was a 1,000-bed city-county hospital. So we had instead of one building, each service had their own building. So there was a building for maternity, a building for pediatrics, a building for medicine, a building for surgery, communicable disease, mental health. You'd come on the ward, and there'd be 2 students and a charge nurse, and there were no private rooms at that time. It was just a ward, 10 patients on one side, 10 patients on the other side, and the charge nurse would say, which side do you want? So you take one side, you had all the bathing, all the medications, all the treatments, everything that had to be done for those patients on that side. So we did receive a very thorough and complete training period for the 3 years.
In all of the different areas?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, wow.
Yes, ma'am. We even got to go sometimes on ambulance service. They would take the students just so that they get an idea of of what needed to be done in emergency situations. Yes. It was a very interesting 3 years.
And then what happened at the end of
Well,
the 3
at that time, as I said, I wasn't able to go into the service yet, so I worked in a local hospital in the operating room,
Okay.
which my last 6 months, as I said, the government had the right to say that we're going to take you out and place you in a naval hospital or an army center or something. But we remained in Philadelphia General. And at that time I decided I really enjoyed the operating room. So I asked if I could spend my last 6 months specializing, which I did. And I worked from 3:30 in the afternoon till 11 at night in the operating room as the charge nurse. And that was interesting because that was the time that the interns would schedule things, because in the morning all the chiefs and the doctors had the main operating rooms. So I got really an experience in the operating room. It seems funny about that when I say my interest and specialty was operating room. I never saw a Navy operating room. I had other responsibilities, but never in the operating room.
Oh. So when did you leave Philadelphia?
Well, I left there and then, as I said, worked about till April, and then once it was assigned to St. Albans, New York, the Naval Hospital, and I was assigned to a ward. Now, imagine this: I'm a new graduate. I have very little contact with patients except in an operating room, where they, of course, don't speak to you or don't communicate with you very much. And here I'm in charge, and I was placed on an officer's convalescent ward, in charge. And I thought, you can do it. You can do it. You've done other things, you can do this. And when I came on duty that first day, I recall the corpsman said to me, "May we meet with you?" So I said, of course. And we walked into the utility room, and they said, now, we're not telling you what to do, but we want you to know that these officers believe that they're wearing their rank on their pajamas, and they like to do what they want to do. And I said, thank you very much. So we walked out, and a man came out of his door and, "Where in the world is my breakfast?" And I walked up to him and I said, "And who are you?" He said, "I'm Lieutenant Commander Lou Smith. I want my breakfast." And I said to him, "I'm Ensign Bernice Zostak. Get back to your room, and as soon as breakfast is ready, you'll be served." He said, "Yes, ma'am," and I got a salute. And he said to all the other patients were kind of listening to what's going on there, and he says, "This one's going to be a tough one." So I really enjoyed my stay on the ward there. And I wasn't at St. Albans for a very long time, just for a matter of almost 6 months, when I got orders to Oakland, California. And I had just bought my first car. Now this is, after the war, and cars were not that available. You had used cars. So I bought this Chevrolet two-door car, and I'm going to drive across country. And my father said to me, "I want you to sell the car." I said, "No." I bought the car. I had absolutely no idea how far the West Coast was, because living on the East Coast, I'd been to Canada and I'd been to Cuba, but never out west. So I went to AAA and they routed me, and I said, "Now, it's winter. This is January. It's winter, so I don't want to go through the snow country." So they took me down and across over to Texas and up to LA and up to San Francisco. And of course my mother's praying for me already, But I took off, and my father said, "Okay, but you must make me a promise." And I said, "What is that?" He said that you'll not pick up any hitchhikers. If you're going to drive, you're going to drive by yourself. So I said, "I promise you," which I did. And then we had a family doctor, And of course, I'd been talking to him about wanting to be a nurse even before I went into nursing. And one time he said, okay, he said, but what you want to do is get the best training. And he said, you want to go to New York, Chicago, or Philadelphia? And I thought, New York's too close. Chicago, ooh, that's way away. So that's when I decided I went to Philadelphia. And he gave me the name of 3 hospitals to go and interview. And I went to the first one, which was had a religious order attached to it. And I thought, no, it wasn't my religious order to begin with. And then I thought, no, I don't want to be praying. I came to be a nurse. And then I went to Philadelphia General. And when I was interviewing there, I was interviewing with a graduate nurse, and they have a peculiar hat, which is called a frill. And it's a accordion pleated thing that's made from linens, and made by this one company who also takes them and cleans them and puts them together. And I saw that and I said, I want that hat. So that's when I decided that's the school I'm going to go to. Didn't bother with the 3rd school. So I'm on my way. I'm on my way to California, and I did very well. I did very well. I got here, and I was assigned to Oakland Naval Hospital, and that's where I came to. Yeah.
And how was that different from where you were before?
Well, before it was, when I arrived at the hospital, I looked at that and I thought, well, this looks like a lumber camp. There were these individual buildings all over. And I thought, where's the hospital? I finally located that. Well, you know, being from the East Coast, the West Coast was entirely different. And I'm going to tell you the other thing. Having a car, I was a very popular person because, you know, the nurses would say, let's go down to the officers club. Let's not go to the local one here. Let's go to Alameda Naval Air Station, you know. So we'd get into our uniforms and hop over and go over there. And one time they said, let's go down in Marin County to the beach down there. And it was fine with me, you know. I'm swimming in the Atlantic Ocean in New York. I come out here, I'm going to swim in the Pacific Ocean. And I had my bathing suit on, and we get out of the car, and I take off my things, got my bathing suit, and they're all standing there looking at me. So I run in, jump in the water. It's freezing! You know, freezing. So California was a different place for me, but I really enjoyed being here. Yeah.
In the hospital, did you have what types of duties?
Well, they put me all over, but let's see. One of my experiences, I have to tell you this, the commanding officer had his kidney removed, and I was called into the chief nurse's office, and there were 2 other nurses there, and she said the captain had his kidney removed, and he wants special duty nurses. He wants a blonde from 7 to 3:30. He wants a brunette from 3:30 to 11, and from 11 to 7 he wants a redhead, and I'm the brunette at that time, and so we were assigned. Oh, and nothing over a Lieutenant JG. See, so we made our assignments. Now, when they operated on him, they nicked his diaphragm, so periodically he'd have these hiccups, and the hiccups would be so bad that he would be exhausted, and we were giving him medication, we were giving oxygen, and finally I said to him, I said, Captain, he was captain, full captain, my father had a saloon in Jersey City, and women were not allowed in the saloons. So it was a place where men walked in and you stood at the bar, and there was a bar rail on the floor and spittoons, and if you ordered anything besides a straight shot with a beer chaser, they'd kick you out. I said, and when the drunks would get the hiccups, Dad would take a lemon, cut it in half, sprinkle bitters on it, and say, suck. And so the captain said, call the officers club, get the lemons, get the bitters, you know. So call the officers club, got the lemons, got the bitters. And he starts, they stop. And he says, call the chief of medicine, I want to report this. So after that, I was his #1 nurse. When he was discharged and he said, I need a nurse to be at my quarters with me, I got the job, you know. And then he called me when he used to come on the ward. Then I was assigned to a regular ward. And you know, you get the as we call him, the old man in the area, and everybody's, you know, being very proper. And I said to him, you know, when you come on the ward, the staff get excited. And he said, well, I want to talk with you. And I said, well, I get off duty at 3:30, and if you want to talk to me, give me a call here, and I'll come in your office. So he called me this one time, and he said, this is your second land station, and you have been promoted. At that time, I got promoted to JG. And you're due for overseas. Where would you like to go? And I thought, oh, where would I like to go? You know, well, you know, the Navy is kind of limited as far as overseas duties. There is, of course, the hospital ships, but they don't have that many, you know. And at that time, my father was ill, and we knew that he might not live through the year. So I said to him, well, wherever I go, I may have to come back quickly if he expires. And can I do that? And he said, I can't guarantee anything. He said, why don't you go to school? And I thought, okay, what kind of schools? They had a school of anesthesiology. I liked the operating room, but I thought, oh, I'm going to sit there with the masks and all that gas all the time. No. And they had a school of maternal child health. And I thought, I didn't join the Navy to deliver babies. And they had a school of dietetics in Washington, D.C. And I'm close to New Jersey. So I said, I think I'd like to be a dietitian. And he said, okay. So he arranged, I'm sure he arranged that I got into that school. So my job, then I had to drive across country again, you know. And I lived in the sorority house. And this was very funny. You know, people would go, Bernice, somebody's here to see you. I'm up on the 2nd or 3rd floor there. One day, Miss Ostak, you have a visitor. And so I come down, and it's the captain. I said, what are you doing in town? He said, I'm going to be promoted to admiral. He said, they're going to put me someplace else. And he said, I want to be sure I'm going where I want to go. So he said, put your uniform on. Come on, we're going to the club for lunch. And I said, I don't know. You know, 1.5 striper, and he's got to hold his gold braid on him. Say, that's an order. So I put my uniform on, went off, had lunch with him there. But I enjoyed being in Washington, D.C., because I was completely separated from the services. But I have to tell you another thing. I'm taking a class in chemistry, and I can't get the formulas. So I go to the professor and I say, I have to pass this test. I'm in the service and there's no failures. And he said, okay, I'll get you a mentor. So he got me another student who apparently was bright. And we met, and I said, where shall we meet? He said, the local bar. So we'd go down to the local bar, get a pitcher of beer, and sit there, and I'm working formulas like mad, you know. And so that would, I passed the test. I passed the grade, yes. And then when I finished, I got sent back to Oakland, back to California, so back again across country. So I know all the best motels to stop at and all the best restaurants to stop at. Yeah.
And how long were you in school in D.C.?
It was a full semester, you know, a full year. Yeah. After which I was considered to be a dietitian.
And did you practice being a dietitian in Oakland?
Yeah, when I came back, yes. Mm-hmm.
What kind of duties did that involve?
Well, I remember, you know, members in the service need to retain a certain weight. And anyone who goes overweight is told that they need to drop those pounds, and if they don't do that, they can be discharged. And most people who join the regular want to be in the 20 years to know that after 20 years I can retire and still do things. So I know one of the jobs that I had was I had a class of obese naval, and they were not officers, they were enlisted men. And I told them, the first thing I said to them is, none of you are going to lose any weight. So they're looking at me. One said, well, why are we here? I said, to listen to what I have to say. I said, but it's all in here. You've got to make up your mind that yes, you're going to follow what you've been told and you're going to do it religiously. And I said, what you're going to do the first week, there's absolutely no eating in between meals. You can have 3 eggs, 6 bacons, waffles, whatever you want to eat, but no in between eating. And then I said, and then the second week, we're going to take what you're eating and cut it into half. So if you order 6 eggs, now you can only have 3. And then we'll do that for a period of time. And then after that, I will alert you to what foods you're absolutely to keep away from. You're to keep away from bacon. You know, if you do a slice once or twice a month, you're going to be doing that in moderation. And we weighed, and they did well, you know, because they knew that it was entirely up to them, and that if they didn't lose the weight, then they were going to be discharged from the service. And some of them had, you know, 12, 15 years, and hey, I'm getting ready for retirement. Don't tell me you're going to take me out. So that was one of the main things. And then I would oversee special diets and speak to the people to encourage them to follow what we were telling them they should and should not do.
Mm-hmm. And how long did you do that?
I'd have to look back.
Or what did you do after that?
I married.
Oh, okay.
I got married when I came back. And he was a naval officer, and he was in command of a ship that was had to do with cable laying here on the West Coast. And then I got pregnant with my first child, and the Navy said, "It's been nice knowing you. Goodbye." So that at that time, they tolerated the fact that you were married, but of course, once you had you have a family, you were out. So I left the service, and then I had a second child, a daughter, and I stayed at home with them until they went to school. And then when they're in school all day, I realized that my RN, because things were changing, is going to require more education. And I lived in San Mateo at that time, and they were starting up a community college. And I went there, and I realized I wanted to teach. Having taught nutrition, I enjoyed the contact and the teaching. So I went back to San Francisco State College and got a Bachelor of Art in Nursing Education. And when I applied at the community college, they said, "Oh, you need to have a master's." At that time, when they were first starting the schools, they said, "You need a master's." So I went to San Francisco, University of California, San Francisco, and got a master's in medical surgical nursing, because medical surgical is the basis. When I applied again, they said, "Oh, we want someone with a degree in psychiatry." And I said, "I'm not going back to school." I didn't go back to school. So I didn't go back to school. I figured that was enough. And one of my classmates was the director of nursing of one of San Mateo County's hospitals. They had 3 hospitals, the general, the rehab, and this one, which was a TB hospital that it was going to be converted to a long-term care facility. And she said, I have Stanford students, nursing students, come there for communicable disease and geriatric nursing. And she said, you know, I don't have time to teach them. She said, why don't you come and work for me? So that's fine, you know. I got to teach, and I got an appointment at Stanford, too. It was about 3 months after I was there, she came to me and she said, I got a job in Fresno, I'm leaving, I want you to take over my job. I said, this is county position, I have to apply. She said, apply, you'll get the job. So I thought at that time, the nursing staff were excellent as far as communicable disease was concerned, but they didn't know geriatric nursing. So I figured, well, I'll be teaching the staff as well as students. So I took the job. And I was there for about 5 years, during which time we made the change and did some innovative things. And I enjoyed working with geriatrics. People say to me, you know, as a nurse, what hospital you worked in? Well, in the Navy hospitals, but outside of that, you know, a hospital, the patients come in, even today, within a couple days, they're gone. So you meet the patient one day, you're off 2 days, you come back, they're gone. But with geriatrics, they stick around a while. So I did that. And then I had, in the state reviews the type of services that are being provided, and we were being examined one time, or reviewed one time, and the investigator said to me, you know, you're doing things here that I wish we could get around to other nursing homes, because Medicare and Medi-Cal were coming into being. And he said, come join the state service and go out and teach these things. And I thought, gee, that was great. And about 5 years, everything was going well. I thought, it's time to leave. So I went, but they gave the job to someone within the unit. But I had a call, and it was a nurse saying, there is a Child Health Disability Prevention Act. That's a federal act that we have to initiate here in the state of California, and the state is going to be divided into 6 parts, and nurses are going to be in charge of the parts to go out to teach the program and get it started. In what it was that children entering school had to have physical examinations. So I thought, that sounds pretty good. So I took the job, and I had Marin County, San Francisco, Monterey, Alameda County.
So you did a lot of driving.
Yeah, but it was, you know, in the area. And I enjoyed doing that. I guess I was doing a good enough job because I got promoted as chief of one of the units, which had to do with the hearing, which had to do with funding that was given to certain counties for certain projects and I had to oversee that. And then the state, this is all under the State Department of Health. And then the State Department decided that they were going to break it off into units. So they had a Department of Mental Health, they had a Department of Occupational Health, and my job was eliminated. And so they said, we can transfer you into maternal child health in Sacramento. And I said, nah, I don't want to do that. I found out that the Department of Mental Health had an office in San Jose. Oh, and about this time, my husband was transferred here into Santa Cruz as director of the health department. So I thought, well, that's easy to get to San Jose. Before that, I was traveling into Berkeley. So I took that job, and That was interesting, to go around to the different facilities, both public and private, to see that they were in compliance with state and federal regulations. And then when I decided that I had enough, and my husband said to me one time, we've had a flood here, we've had a fire, we've had an earthquake, and you're never around here for the next catastrophe. So I think I'd like you home for the next one. And so I said, okay. So I decided to leave. And there were counties up in the north who called me and said, we're having a meeting, so would you meet with us? I said, sure. And when I did, they asked me, they said, we know that you're leaving, and we're asking you if you will act as a consultant to us, so that when we get new staff in here and you'd come in and review to see that we're in compliance, because if they weren't, the state took money away from them. So I set up my own business and did that for a number of years. And I kept saying to these counties, you're doing fine, you don't need me anymore. No, we want you to come. We want you to, even if it's every other month or something, we want you to come and check us through, because, you help us keep this money here. So I did that. So I did that for a while. Locally here in Santa Cruz, I worked for the Visiting Nurse Association during flu season. I worked at the first aid as a first aid nurse at the Beach Boardwalk for 5 years. And until last year I worked with Johns Hopkins University at the university here. In the summer they have 2 programs, each one is 3 weeks, for talented youth, they call them. But these are students whose educational level is up here. And so each camp had 225 students in there. So I had 2 assistants, and it was the first aid, because those kids didn't know how to walk. They always ran, and fall down, not only scrape their knees, they'd break their teeth, they'd bang their noses and stuff. So I did first aid. But last year was the last year, because I figured I was getting on in age, and the gentleman who was in charge of it was leaving also. So I thought, well, he's leaving, I'll leave too. So last year I decided that was enough.
Is that when you moved here?
Oh, I've been living in Santa Cruz for 35 years.
In this facility?
Yeah. Yes. I moved here last May.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Nice story. I want to hear about how do you think your service affected your life? Your community service.
I'm sure there are some people who go into the service and serve their time and leave and kind of forget it. I've never forgotten the service. I was married twice. My second husband was an Army officer. And he was very much for the Army. You should have seen us at the Army football games. Even watching it on television was bad enough. And so I've always felt that even though I'm not actually serving, I still feel a part of the military service.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Wonderful. And is there anything else that you want to add?
I can't think of anything. Or how much time have you got? No. Do you think I've given you enough about myself?
I think so. Yes. Thank you very much.
Unless you have some specific questions.
How did you spend your time, your R&R, when you were both in Oakland and in D.C.? What did you do?
Well, of course, being so close, New York to home, I had to come home to the family. And coming out here, it's so close to Hawaii, And, you know, being in the military, you just go down to Alameda and say, when's the next plane leaving for Honolulu? And when you get over there, you know some of the nurses at the hospital, so, you know, they can always put you up someplace.
That sounds nice. And did you form a lot of friendships too while you served?
Yes. Yes.
And do you keep in touch with any of?
No. You know, it's been a time, and you unless you're in contact with them very frequently, I can't think of anybody who was in the service that I'm still in touch with.
But you are a member of the military
I'm a member of the
officers?
Military Officers Association, yes.
Okay. And so you go to meetings once?
Yeah, I'm on the board.
Oh, okay.
I'm on the board, and we have a monthly meeting. I got involved with them. They have a scholarship program for students, and so I told them about the Shadowbrook dinner that they have once a year for organizations, for which they give you 33% of the bill, which we did. We've done it for 2 years now, and received sufficient money where we were able to fund a student or two.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Bernice, for sharing your story. It's wonderful, all the different things you got to do as a nurse.
I had a full life.
That's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
I could say that.
Thank you very much.